Okay, today is the 16th of August, and we are coming to the last three suttas of the Salayatana Samyutta. Sutta 35.246. Monks, if in any monk or nun, desire or lust, or hatred or delusion or aversion of mind should arise in regard to forms cognizable by the eye, such a one should rein in the mind from them thus. This path is fearful, dangerous, strewn with thorns, covered by jungle, a deviant path, an evil path, a way beset by scarcity. This is a path followed by inferior people. It is not the path followed by superior people. This is not for you. In this way the mind should be reined in from those states regarding forms cognizable by the eye. So too regarding sounds cognizable by the ear, smells, taste, touch and thoughts. So here the Buddha is saying that whenever the six sense objects impinge on our sense bases, if any desire or hatred or delusion should arise, or lust, hatred and delusion should arise, then we should keep the mind in check, remembering that this happening, that this mind is moved by these sense objects. Remember that this is fearful, dangerous, an evil path followed by inferior people. Suppose, monks, that the barley has ripened and the watchman is negligent. If a bull fond of barley enters the barley field, he might indulge himself as much as he likes. So too, monks, the unlearned, ordinary worldling, who does not exercise restraint over the six bases for contact, indulges himself as much as he likes in the five chords of sensual pleasure. Suppose, monks, that the barley has ripened and the watchman is vigilant. If a bull fond of barley enters the barley field, the watchman would catch hold of him firmly by the muzzle. While holding him firmly by the muzzle, he would get a secure grip on the locks between his horns, and keeping him in check there, would give him a sound beating with his staff. After giving him that beating, he would drive the bull away. This might happen a second time and a third time. Thus that bull, fond of barley, whether he has gone to the village or the forest, whether he is accustomed to standing or to sitting, remembering the previous beating he got from the staff, would not enter that barley field again. So too, monks, when a monk's mind has been subdued, well subdued, regarding the six bases for contact, it then becomes inwardly steady, settled, unified and concentrated. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is giving an example of a bull. He goes into a barley field and then the watchman is negligent, does not notice. Because of his carelessness, the bull is able to enter the barley field and indulge and eat all that barley. It's like a person who does not exercise restraint, does not watch over the six bases of contact. So he indulges himself in pleasurable things and feels aversion for unpleasant things. But if the watchman is vigilant, he'll catch the bull and give him a sound beating. So beat him severely, then the bull run away. Then if he comes a second time, beats him again. He comes a third time, beats him again. Then the bull will remember the beating and will not enter the barley field again. So in the same way, most people who are not wise to the world, not streetwise, not world-wise, then we like to enjoy worldly pleasures. When we enjoy worldly pleasures, we get a sound beating, we suffer. We suffer, like the other day we read, either we have covetousness, when you enjoy something, you want to possess it, or When you cannot get it, then you feel grief. So these two states, unwholesome states, covetousness and grief. So when we have this unwholesome states, it's like getting a sound beating. So we suffer a few times, and then we learn a lesson. Then next time we are more careful. Then the Buddha said, when a monk's mind has been subdued, well subdued regarding the 6 bases for contact, it then becomes inwardly steady, settled, unified and concentrated. One is if a monk practices meditation and attains the jhanas. When he attains the jhanas, the mind is subdued. Subdue what? Subdue the 5 hindrances. When the 5 hindrances are subdued, then the mind becomes steady, settled, unified, concentrated. Then it is not easily moved by external sense objects. Suppose monks, there was a king or a royal minister who had never before heard the sound of a lute. He might hear the sound of a lute and say, "Good man, what is making this sound? So tantalizing, so lovely, so intoxicating, so entrancing, so enthralling." He would then say to him, "Sire, it is a lute that is making this sound, so tantalizing, so lovely, so intoxicating, so entrancing, so enthralling." He would reply, "Go man, bring me that lute." They would bring him the lute and tell him, "Sire, this is that lute, the sound of which was so tantalizing, so lovely, etc." The king would say, "I've had enough with this lute, man. Bring me just that sound." The man would reply, "This lute, sire, consists of numerous components, of a great many components, and it gives off a sound when it is played upon with its numerous components. That is, independence on the parchment, sounding board, the belly, the arm, the head, the strings, the plectrum, and the appropriate effort of the musician. So it is, sire, that this lute consisting of numerous components, of a great many components, gives off a sound when it is played upon with its numerous components." The king would split the lute into 10 or 100 pieces. Then he would reduce these to splinters. Having reduced them to splinters, he would burn them in a fire and reduce them to ashes. And he would winnow the ashes in a strong wind, or let them be carried away by the swift current of a river. Then he would say, "A poor thing indeed, sir, is this so-called lute, as well as anything else called a lute. How the multitude are utterly heedless about it, utterly taken in by it." So to monks, a monk investigates form to the extent that there is a range for form. He investigates feeling to the extent that there is a range for feeling. He investigates perception to the extent that there is a range for perception. He investigates volition to the extent that there is a range for volition. He investigates consciousness to the extent that there is a range for consciousness. As he investigates form, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, whatever notions of I and mine or I am had occurred to him before no longer occur to him. That's the end of the sutta. So here, this simile says that this king, when he heard the sound of the lute, he was so excited by it, thought it was so lovely. So he asked them to bring him the lute. So when he examined the lute, he could not find the sound. So trying to find the sound, he cut the lute into many pieces and could not find it. Then he burned it and still could not find it. So he said, "This is a useless thing." The simile is trying to say that these 5 aggregates, because we derive pleasure from the body and the mind, so we think it's a very special thing. But when you start investigating the 5 aggregates, body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, then you find it is hollow, there's nothing in there. So when you understand the real nature of the 5 aggregates, how they arise through conditions, how they cease through conditions and all that, then the notions of I and mine and I am that we had before will slowly vanish. The Similarly, about the bull and the barley field is to tell us to keep a watch on our six sense bases, not to allow the sense objects to move our mind. The second part is if we investigate the five aggregates thoroughly, then we'll slowly understand there is no I or mine or I am in them. Next sutta, 35.247. Monks, suppose a man with limbs wounded and festering would enter a wood of thorny reeds, and the kusa grass and the kusa thorns would prick his feet, and the reed blades would slash his limbs. Thus that man would thereby experience even more pain and displeasure. So too monks, some monk here, gone to the village or the forest, meets someone who reproaches him thus. This venerable one, acting in such a way, behaving in such a way, is a foul village thorn. Having understood him thus as a thorn, one should understand restraint and non-restraint. And how, monks, is there non-restraint? Here, having seen a form with the eye, a monk is intent upon a pleasing form and repelled by a displeasing form. He dwells without having set up mindfulness of the body with a limited mind, and he does not understand as it really is that liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. Similarly, having heard a sound with the ear, having smelt an odor, having tasted a taste, having cognized a touch, and having cognized a thought, he is intent upon a pleasing contact and repelled by a displeasing contact. He dwells without having set up mindfulness of the body with a limited mind, and he does not understand as it really is that liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, a man is already, his limbs are wounded and festering and open wound, and he goes into a forest which has many thorny reeds and kusa thorns, and so the thorns prick his feet, and the reed blades, just like lalang, would cut his limbs, so that man experiences even more pain. So in the same way, the Buddha says, a monk, he goes to a village, and then he meets someone who passes a nasty remark, saying that he is a village thorn. He already has enough dukkha, so this person passes nasty remark, he has more dukkha. And the Buddha says, so he should understand restraint and non-restraint. Non-restraint means he is moved by the sense objects. If the sense object is pleasing, he desires it, and if it is displeasing, he feels aversion for it. Suppose, monks, a man would catch 6 animals with different domains and different feeding grounds, and tie them by a strong rope. He would catch a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a jackal, and a monkey, and tie each by a strong rope. Having done so, he would tie the ropes together with a knot in the middle and release them. Then those 6 animals with different domains and different feeding grounds would each pull in the direction of its own feeding ground and domain. The snake would pull one way, thinking, let me enter an ant-hill. In other words, the snake wants to enter a hole. The crocodile would pull another way, thinking, let me enter the water. The bird would pull another way, thinking, let me fly up into the sky. The dog would pull another way, thinking, let me enter a village. The dog wants to look for food. The jackal would pull another way, thinking, let me enter a charnel ground, a cemetery. The monkey would pull another way, thinking, let me enter a forest. Now when these 6 animals become worn out and fatigued, they would be dominated by the one among them that was strongest. they would submit to it and come under its control. So too monks, when a monk has not developed and cultivated mindfulness directed to the body, the eye pulls in the direction of agreeable forms, and disagreeable forms are repulsive. The ear pulls in the direction of agreeable sounds, and disagreeable sounds are repulsive. The nose pulls in the direction of agreeable odors, and disagreeable odors are repulsive. The tongue pulls in the direction of agreeable tastes, and disagreeable tastes are repulsive. Body pulls in the direction of agreeable tactile objects or touch, and disagreeable tactile objects are repulsive. The mind pulls in the direction of agreeable thoughts, and disagreeable thoughts are repulsive. This in such a way that there is non-restraint. And how monks is there restraint? Here, having seen a form with the eye, a monk is not intent upon a pleasing form, and not repelled by a displeasing form. He dwells, having set up mindfulness of the body with a measureless mind, and he understands as it really is, that liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. Having heard a sound, having smelt a smell, etc., he is not intent upon a pleasing sense contact, and not repelled by a displeasing one. He dwells, having set up mindfulness of the body with a measureless mind, and he understands as it really is, that liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. This in such a way that there is restraint. Suppose monks, a man would catch 6 animals with different domains and different feeding grounds, and tie them by a strong rope. He would catch a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a jackal, and a monkey, and tie each by a strong rope. Having done so, he would bind them to a strong post or pillar. Then those 6 animals with different domains and different feeding grounds would each pull in the direction of its own feeding ground and domain. The snake would pull one way, thinking, let me enter ant hill, etc. And the 6 animals pull in the 6 different directions now. Now when these 6 animals become worn out and fatigued, they would stand close to that post or pillar. They would sit down there. They would lie down there. So too monks. When a monk has developed and cultivated mindfulness directed to the body, the eye does not pull in the direction of agreeable forms, nor are disagreeable forms repulsive. The ear does not pull in the direction of agreeable sounds, nor are disagreeable sounds repulsive. The nose does not pull in the direction of agreeable odors, nor are disagreeable odors repulsive. The tongue does not pull in the direction of agreeable tastes, nor are disagreeable tastes repulsive. The body does not pull in the direction of agreeable tactile objects or touch, nor are disagreeable ones repulsive. The mind does not pull in the direction of agreeable thoughts, nor are disagreeable thoughts repulsive. It is in such a way that there is restraint. A strong post or pillar, this monks, is a designation for mindfulness directed to the body. Therefore, monks, you should train yourselves thus. We will develop and cultivate mindfulness directed to the body. Make it our vehicle, make it our basis, stabilize it, exercise ourselves in it, and fully perfect it. Thus should you train yourselves. It's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha gives a simile to make us understand the unrestrained mind and the restrained mind. So the Buddha gives this simile of 6 animals that are caught by the hunter, and he ties a rope around the neck of each animal, and the 6 ropes he ties into a knot, and then he releases the animals, and the animals would go in 6 different directions. The bird wants to fly up the air, the monkey wants to go to the forest and climb up a tree, the snake wants to go into a hole, the crocodile wants to go into the water, the dog wants to go into town to look for food, the jackal wants to go up the hill. This is a charnel ground. So the 6 animals are pulling in different directions, and whichever one is the strongest, it pulls, and the rest have to follow him. When he's tired, another one will take over and pull, and the others have to follow him. This is a very good simile for the working of the mind. Our mind is pulled by the 6 different sense objects. Forms want us to see, sounds want us to hear, smells want us to smell, and similarly your taste, touch, and thoughts. So whichever one is strongest at any one time, we pay attention to it. For example, now you are listening to the Dhamma talk. And it's suppose suddenly outside somebody sounds the horn, bon, so loud, your attention immediately is pulled there. So actually this is an unrestrained mind. Our attention is moving from one object to another object. And unfortunately nowadays people talk about momentary concentration. This is exactly momentary concentration. This momentary concentration is of no use at all. It's an unrestrained mind. And it's the normal mind. You don't have to practice momentary concentration. We have momentary concentration all the time. The only problem is what we are paying attention to is of no benefit. Sometimes, for example, you might be meditating and then you fall asleep. When you fall asleep, you are still mindful, but you are mindful of your thoughts, of your dreams. So, for example, if your mind strays and you start having stray thoughts, you're still mindful, but you're mindful of the stray thoughts, which is totally useless. That's why when we practice sati, sati is not mindfulness. Sati is recollection, remembering to put your attention or your mindfulness on only 4 objects. Only one of 4 objects. The body, the feeling, the mind, and Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. Right? So that's the meaning of sati. Sati is remembering to put your mindfulness to these 4 things. That's why it's called recollection. Sati means recollection. If you want to use the word mindfulness, then it is a specific mindfulness. It is not general mindfulness. It is specific mindfulness directed only to 4 things. That is sati. But it's better to remember as recollection because it has to do with remembering, calling to mind these 4 things. Right? So this unrestrained mind is the ordinary mind that is just momentary concentration. Your mind just goes from one object to another, one object to another. You're paying attention to one object and another. It's totally unrestrained. So the Buddha says, to restrain the mind, these 6 animals, going back to these 6 animals, to restrain these animals, the Buddha says, the hunter has to tie the 6 ropes to a stout pillar. And if you tie it to a stout pillar, whichever way they want to go, they can only go around that pillar. They cannot go anywhere else. They go around the pillar until they are totally fatigued. Then they will lie down beside the pillar. They will rest beside the pillar. They can't go anywhere else. That is the way to discipline them, restrain them. Then they are totally subdued. So this simile is telling us this pillar represents mindfulness of the body. So mindfulness of the body. This body is not necessarily the physical body. It can be the breath body, like the Buddha himself practices anapanasati, recollection of the breath. So the breath itself can be considered as a body. You pay attention to it. But probably you can consider other things, like during the Buddha's time, they practice meditation on the kasinas, like meditating on candlelight. That probably can be considered a body. And meditation on water. It is open your eyes, watch the water, see the water, and then close your eyes and open. Constantly keep seeing until the object stays with the mind. So that maybe can be considered a body also. Or you consider your physical body. Because as long as your mind is, you are mindful of the physical body, the mind does not wander off. So it helps you to preserve your mindfulness. So this is the way to restrain our mind. So if we continually keep our attention fixed to one object, because here the pillar represents one object. So when we meditate now, we are supposed to focus our attention only on one object, not to go from object to object, only one object. The mind tries to run away, we bring it back to that object. It tries to run away, we bring it back to that object. Constantly do that until we are able to subdue the mind. So it will stay, when your mindfulness stays with one object, then the mind becomes unified, and you attain the state of jhana. And when you attain the state of jhana, then the 5 hindrances dissolve away. And that is the purpose of meditation, to get rid of the 5 hindrances, so that you can see things clearly as they really are. So that is why in the suttas, the type of meditation praised by the Buddha is always the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. So this is a very famous sutta, simile of the 6 animals. Okay, now I come to the last sutta in the Salayatana Samyutta, 35.248. The Buddha said, monks, suppose a sheaf of barley was set down at a crossroads. Then 6 men would come along with flails in their hands, and they would strike that sheaf of barley with the 6 flails. Then that sheaf of barley would be well struck, having been struck by the 6 flails. Then a 7th man would come along with a flail in his hand, and he would strike that sheaf of barley with the 7th flail. Thus that sheaf of barley would be struck even still more thoroughly, having been struck by the 7th flail. So here this simile says, you have this bunch of barley tied up, and then these 6 men come along with this flail. Flail is something to whip. So they whip the barley. 6 of them whip the barley, so the barley will be well struck. Then a 7th man would come along and also strike it. So too monk, the unlearned ordinary worldling, is struck in the eye by agreeable and disagreeable forms, struck in the ear by agreeable and disagreeable sounds, struck in the nose by agreeable and disagreeable odors, struck in the tongue by agreeable and disagreeable tastes, struck in the body by agreeable and disagreeable tactile objects, struck in the mind by agreeable and disagreeable thoughts. If that unlearned ordinary worldling sets his mind upon future renewed existence, then that senseless man is struck even still more thoroughly, just like the sheaf of barley struck by the 7th flail. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, just like that sheaf of barley, we are struck by the 6 sense objects. Why do we say we are struck? Because when the 6 sense objects impinge on our 6 sense bases, then feeling arises. Feeling is followed by perception, followed by thoughts, followed by chasing after the object. And so from here you get a lot of what we call pannao. All the mental defilements arise because of this 6 sense objects striking at our 6 sense bases. So that's why the Buddha gives us simile of that sheaf of barley being hit and hit again. And then if this ordinary unlearned worldling, he thinks about future rebirth, how he aspires to have a good rebirth in heaven or whatever place, then he is said to be struck even more thoroughly. Why? Because when he thinks of making a wish for the future, then that gives him more anxiety. Just like a lot of people, we not only have remorse over things that are past, we worry about things that have not come yet, worry about the future, we have remorse over the past. So in the same way, this man, he thinks about the future, rebirth and all that, then maybe either he wants to think of going to heaven, or he's afraid that because his karma is no good, he's going to hell, or he's going to ghost realm or whatever, and then all that is, to him, is fun now. Mental disturbance, defilements. And then the Buddha continued. Once in the past, monks, the Devas and Asuras were arrayed for battle. Then Vepachiti, lord of the Asuras, addressed the Asuras thus: Good sirs, if in this impending battle the Asuras win and the Devas are defeated, bind Sakka Devaraja by his 4 limbs and neck and bring him to me in the city of the Asuras. And Sakka Devaraja addressed the Tavatimsa Devas, good sirs, if in this impending battle the Devas win and the Asuras are defeated, bind Vepachiti, lord of the Asuras, by his 4 limbs and neck and bring him to me in Sudhamma, the assembly hall of the Devas. In that battle the Devas won and the Asuras were defeated. Then the Tavatimsa Devas bound Vepachiti by his 4 limbs and neck and brought him to Sakka in Sudhamma, the assembly hall of the Devas. And there Vepachiti, lord of the Asuras, was bound by his 4 limbs and neck. When it occurred to Vepachiti, the Devas are righteous, the Asuras are unrighteous or wrong. Now right here I have gone to the city of the Devas. He then saw himself freed from the bonds around his limbs and neck, and he enjoyed himself furnished and endowed with the 5 cords of divine sensual pleasure. But when it occurred to him, the Asuras are righteous, the Devas are unrighteous. Now I will go to the city of the Asuras. But when it occurred to him, the Asuras are righteous, the Devas are unrighteous. Now I will go to the city of the Asuras. Then he saw himself bound by his 4 limbs and neck, and he was deprived of the 5 cords of divine sensual pleasure. So subtle, monks, was the bondage of Vepachiti, but even subtler than that is the bondage of Mara. In conceiving, one is bound by Mara. By not conceiving, one is freed from the evil one. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that this king of the Asuras, he was caught by the Devas and he was brought to the Deva city. The Devas, they have Sakka Devaraja as their head. So when he was caught and tied up, if he thought that the Asuras are right and the Devas are wrong, then he feels himself a prisoner. He's very unhappy. He's very. He feels he should not be there, tied up like that. So he has a lot of mental suffering. But on the other hand, the Buddha says, if he had thought that actually the Devas are right and the Asuras in wrong in starting the fight or something like that, so he has nothing against the Devas. So if they caught him, then he would be happy to be caught. Then he would have no thoughts troubling him when he is caught and brought to the Devas. In which case, if he concurs with the Devas, that the Devas are right, then probably they would probably also release him and let him enjoy all the heavenly pleasures. So what the Buddha is trying to say is that our perception, our thinking is very important. If you think in the right way, you don't suffer. If you think the wrong way, you suffer. There's a lot of people, like for example, when dukkha comes, a lot of people, you cannot accept it. For example, if somebody says something nasty to you, then you start thinking, why did he say this to me? I've been so good to him. I've done him so many favors and all that. I don't deserve to be scolded like that and all that. The more you think, the more defilements arise. You become very angry, and perhaps that whole night you cannot sleep. But on the other hand, if somebody says something nasty to you, then you think that must be my karma. Maybe in the past I offended him, I didn't notice. Or in a past life, I did something wrong, so now I deserve what I get. And then you have no problem anymore, right? You just forget about the incident. It's only when you cannot accept it, then all the mental defilements will follow. So the way we look at things is very important, our state of the mind. So the Buddha is saying, so subtle, monks, was the bondage of Vepachiti, but even subtler than that is the bondage of Mara. In conceiving, one is bound by Mara. By not conceiving, one is freed from the evil one. Monks, I am is a conceiving. I am this is a conceiving. I shall be is a conceiving. I shall not be is a conceiving. I shall consist of form is a conceiving. I shall be formless is a conceiving. I shall be percipient is a conceiving. I shall be non-percipient is a conceiving. I shall be neither percipient nor non-percipient is a conceiving. Conceiving is a disease. Conceiving is a tumor. Conceiving is a dart. Therefore, monks, you should train yourselves thus. You will dwell with a mind devoid of conceiving. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, the tendency of the mind to conceive is like to have a concept, Kuan Yin, Chinese called Kuan Yin, that I exist. Because, for example, when happiness arises, for example, you see something beautiful, or you hear very nice sounds, or you taste very good food, then you like to think, I am enjoying myself. I am enjoying myself. Instead of just thinking there is just a pleasurable feeling arising. But because we have this perception that I enjoy. So the Buddha calls this the bondage of Mara. If you have this concept, I, then one day you enjoy, I am happy. Another day, I will suffer. So happiness and suffering follows one after another, because this world is impermanent. When you enjoy anything, when it goes away, then you will have suffering. So this I am, the Buddha says, is a trap of Mara. And if you keep on conceiving, you will suffer. So this concept that I am or I exist, we should be very careful. We don't have that concept, I, then you don't suffer. Monks, I am is a perturbation. I am this is a perturbation, is a disturbance of the mind. And all these other views, it's a disturbance of the mind, it's a dart, it's a tumor. Monks, I am is a palpitation, something that will shake you. I am this is a palpitation. I shall be is a palpitation. Palpitation is a disease, it's a tumor, it's a dart. Therefore, monks, you should train yourselves. We will dwell with a mind devoid of palpitation. Monks, I am is a proliferation. Proliferation is papancha, proliferation of thoughts. I am this is a proliferation. I shall be is a proliferation. Proliferation is a disease. Proliferation is a tumor, is a dart. Therefore, monks, you should train yourselves thus. You will dwell with a mind devoid of proliferation. Monks, I am is an involvement with conceit. I am this is an involvement with conceit. I shall be is an involvement with conceit. I shall whatever, etc. Involvement with conceit is a disease. Involvement with conceit is a tumor. Involvement with conceit is a dart. Therefore, monks, you should train yourselves thus. You will dwell with a mind in which conceit has been struck down. Thus should you train yourselves. It's the end of the sutta. So in this last part, the Buddha says, just like the Vipachiti, when he was caught, depending on his state of mind, if his state of mind is not skillful, then he will suffer. If his state of mind, he has skillful thoughts, wholesome thoughts, then he will not have so much mental suffering. So in the same way, if we have this conceiving that I am, I exist, then a lot of suffering will follow. And this conceiving, the Buddha says, is a perturbation. It's something that disturbs your mind. It's a palpitation, something that will shake your mind. It's a proliferation. It's a multiplication of thoughts. It's an involvement with conceit. Okay. So there we have finished the Salayatana Samyutta. Now we come to the second chapter of this book, this fourth book. Chapter 36 called Vedana Samyutta. Vedana is feeling. The first sutta I'll read is 36.3. Monks, there are these three feelings. What three? Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. There's neutral feeling. The underlying tendency to lust should be abandoned in regard to pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to aversion should be abandoned in regard to painful feeling. The underlying tendency to ignorance should be abandoned in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Stop here for a moment. So here, generally, when we have a pleasant feeling, there is a tendency to lust for it, to crave for it. And then when there is a painful feeling, there's a tendency to feel aversion for it, to be repelled by it. And then when there is neither painful nor pleasant feeling, neutral feeling, equanimous feeling, then we tend to be ignorant of it. We don't notice it. When a monk has abandoned the underlying tendency to lust in regard to pleasant feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion in regard to painful feeling, and the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling, then he is called a monk without underlying tendencies, one who sees rightly. He has cut off craving, severed the fetters, and by completely breaking through conceit, he has made an end to suffering. So the Buddha says a monk should get rid of the tendency to lust for pleasant feeling, the tendency to aversion towards painful feeling, and the tendency to ignorance in regard to neutral feeling. This word lust, the other day someone asked about this greed, hatred and delusion, and then lust, hatred and delusion. This word lust, I think, doesn't necessarily mean in regard to sex. Lust means a strong greed, very strong greed. So it is lust. And then the verses follow. When one experiences pleasure, if one does not understand feeling, the tendency to lust is present, for one not seeing the escape from it. One experiences pain. If one does not understand feeling, the tendency to aversion is present, for one not seeing the escape from it. The one of broad wisdom has taught, with reference to that peaceful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant. If one seeks delight even in this, one is still not released from suffering. But when a monk who is ardent does not neglect clear comprehension, then that wise man fully understands feelings in their entirety. Having fully understood feelings, he is stainless in this very life. Standing in Dhamma, with the body's breakup, the knowledge master cannot be reckoned. It's the end of the sutta. So how do we get rid of this underlying tendency? That is by cultivating samadhi. When our mind is very strong, then it is not easily moved by lust or aversion. The next sutta, 35.4, Buddha said, monks, when the unlearned ordinary worldling makes the statement, in the great ocean there is a bottomless abyss, he makes such a statement about something that is non-existent and unreal. This, monks, is rather a designation for painful bodily feelings, that is, bottomless abyss. When the uninstructed or the unlearned ordinary worldling is contacted by a painful bodily feeling, he sorrows, grieves and laments. He weeps and beats his breast and becomes distraught. This is called an unlearned ordinary worldling who has not risen up in the bottomless abyss, one who has not gained a foothold. But monks, when the learned noble disciple is contacted by a painful bodily feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve or lament. He does not weep and beat his breast and become distraught. This is called a learned noble disciple who has risen up in the bottomless abyss, one who has gained a foothold. And then the verses, one who cannot endure the arisen painful feelings, bodily feelings that sap one's life, who trembles when they touch him, a weakling of little strength, who weeps out loud and wails. He has not risen up in the bottomless abyss, nor has he even gained a foothold. But one who is able to endure them, the arisen painful feelings, bodily feelings that sap one's life, who trembles not when they touch him, he has risen up in the bottomless abyss, and he has also gained a foothold. That's the end of the sutta. So the Buddha says, some people say that there is a bottomless abyss in the ocean. The Buddha says there's no such thing. But the Buddha says, painful bodily feelings, that is the bottomless abyss. And if an ordinary person contacted by painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves, and totally becomes distraught, he has not risen up from the bottomless abyss. But the learned noble disciple, when he is contacted by painful bodily feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve, or lament. He bears the pain. Then he is called one who has risen up from the bottomless abyss. That's the end of the sutta. 36.5. Monks, there are these three feelings. What three? Pleasant feeling, painful feeling. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Pleasant feelings, monks, should be seen as pain. Pleasant feeling, monks, should be seen as painful. Painful feelings should be seen as a dart. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling should be seen as impermanent. When monks, a monk has seen pleasant feeling as painful, painful feeling as a dart, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling as impermanent, he is called a monk who sees rightly. He has cut off craving, severed the fetters, and by completely breaking through conceit, he has made an end to suffering. One who has seen the pleasant as painful, and the painful as a dart, seen as impermanent the peaceful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant, he is a monk who sees rightly, one who fully understands feelings. Having fully understood feelings, he is stainless in this very life. Standing in Dhamma, with the body's break-up, the knowledge master cannot be reckoned. That's the end of the sutta. So, if you remember when we discussed dependent origination, the 12 links of dependent origination, suffering arises because when there is a pleasant feeling, we crave for it. Because there is an underlying tendency to crave for pleasant feelings. So if you crave for pleasant feelings, then you have attachment, clinging, and clinging gives rise to bhava, this being. You feel that I am or I exist, and because you have this existence, I exist, then there is rebirth. So you want to break the chain of the 12 links of dependent origination. It is at feeling that we can break the chain, only at feeling. So feeling is very important. We should not be thoroughly overpowered by feeling. There are some people, they cannot control themselves totally. You can see very normal people, for example, when they eat good food, the food is good, they cannot control themselves, they indulge so horribly, almost like our dogs, when the dogs, you bring good food to them, the saliva will come down the mouth. So human beings are a bit like that. So unfortunately, people who cannot control their tongue, they cannot live long. Because even in the sutta, I remember the Kosala Samyutta, the Buddha told the Pasanadi king, restraint is eating, then he have a long life. I had a devotee in Penang, he could not restrain his eating, and he had a stroke. And after that, for a few years he restrained himself. After a few years when he recovered, he could not restrain himself again. Before he reached 50, he passed away. So here the Buddha says, pleasant feeling should be seen as painful. This one, ordinary person will never see it this way. When pleasant feeling arises, if you have the wisdom, you know, you warn yourself, don't get attached to it. Because if you get attached to it, and then when you lose it, you are going to suffer. It reminds me, one of our devotees in KL, he told me something. He told me a few years ago, he sent his son to Australia to study. The son went swimming, I think, and drowned. The only son, he had one son, I think, and two daughters. So the only son drowned. He and his wife suffered so much. And after that he told me, after that experience, he dare not love his daughter so much. So he knows, just like this, pleasant feeling should be seen as painful. And then painful feeling should be seen as a dart. When we have painful feeling, it pokes us like a dart. And then neither painful nor pleasant feeling should be seen as impermanent. For example, if I get a good meditation and your mind is very equanimous, you feel very nice. But you should realize that it is impermanent, it will pass away. Don't attach to it. So if a monk sees feelings in this way, then he has cut off craving, severe fetters, and he breaks to conceit that I am, and then he will end suffering. You see, sutras like this, we never think that we should see pleasant feeling as painful. That's why it's so good to study the Buddha's words. When you study the Buddha's words, all these words of wisdom, and it's as though the Buddha is giving us a shortcut. If you didn't hear these words, you'll have to meditate many years and attain jhana before you realize this yourself. But here, the Buddha is telling us so that we see it clearly without even striving to attain it. The next sutta is 36.6. The Buddha said, monks, the unlearned ordinary worldling feels a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. The learned noble disciple also feels a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Therein, monks, what is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the learned noble disciple and the unlearned ordinary worldling? And the monk said, Venerable Sir, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, guided by the Blessed One. Take recourse in the Blessed One. It would be good if the Blessed One would clear up the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monks will remember it. Then listen and attend closely, monks, I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. Monks, when the unlearned ordinary worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. He feels two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, then they would strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart, so that the man would feel a feeling caused by two darts. So too, when the unlearned ordinary worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. He feels two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Being contacted by the same painful feeling, he harbors aversion towards it. When he harbors aversion towards painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feeling lies behind this. Being contacted by painful feeling, he seeks delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the unlearned ordinary worldling does not know of any escape from painful feeling other than sensual pleasure. When he seeks delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to lust for pleasant feeling lies behind this. He does not understand as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, danger and escape in the case of these feelings. When he does not understand these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling lies behind this. When he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it attached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it attached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it attached. This monk is called an unlearned ordinary worldling, who is attached to birth, aging and death, who is attached to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, who is attached to suffering, I say. Monks, when the learned, noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve or lament. He does not beat his breast and become distraught. He feels one feeling, a bodily one, not a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, but they would not strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart, so that the man would feel a feeling caused by one dart only. So too, when the noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling. He does not sorrow, grieve, or lament. He does not weep, beating his breast and become distraught. He feels one feeling, bodily one, not a mental one. Being contacted by that same painful feeling, he harbors no aversion towards it. Since he harbors no aversion towards painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feeling does not lie behind this. Being contacted by painful feeling, he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the learned noble disciple knows of an escape from painful feeling other than sensual pleasure. Since he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to lust for pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. He understands as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, danger and escape in the case of these feelings. Since he understands these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. This monk is called a noble disciple who is detached from birth, aging and death, who is detached from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, who is detached from suffering, I say. This monk is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the learned noble disciple and the unlearned or ordinary worldling. The wise one, learned, does not feel the pleasant and painful mental feeling. This is the great difference between the wise one and the worldling. For the learned one who has comprehended the Dhamma, who clearly sees this world and the next, desirable things do not provoke his mind. Towards the undesired he has no aversion. For him, attraction and repulsion no more exist. Both have been extinguished, brought to an end. Having known the dust-free, sorrowless state, the transcender of existence rightly understands. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says that the difference between an ordinary worldling and Aryan disciple is that the ordinary worldling is struck by two darts. One is the body pain, the other one is the mental pain. Whereas the Aryan disciple is only struck by one dart, bodily suffering. So why? Because the Aryan disciple, he understands the Dhamma. He understands that everything arises from causes and conditions. And because they arise from past causes and conditions, there's nothing much you can do about it. We can only plan for the future. We can only do something now to affect the future. We cannot change what is happening now, because what is happening now is karma vipaka, mainly. Causes and conditions from the past has been set in motion so that whatever causes, conditions that we generated in the past, now the results are coming to us. So because we understand this, then whatever comes our way, we accept it. We accept it that this is our fate. So that being the case, when we suffer, we don't have mental suffering because we don't think so much about it. For ordinary people, when suffering comes, they cannot accept it, you see, because they don't understand. Because they don't understand, they cannot accept things. So then they have bodily suffering plus the mental suffering. The mental suffering is made by themselves because of proliferation of thoughts, because of not understanding the Dhamma, and because their mind is not cultivated to be strong. So there's a difference between an ordinary person and a learned noble disciple. So a noble disciple, if he feels a pleasant feeling or so, he feels it detached. He makes himself detached from it because he understands if he attaches to it, it will be a source of suffering in future. So when he feels a painful feeling or so, he feels it detached. It's not that he does not have the pain. He has the body pain. But he does not multiply the pain by thinking about it and getting mental pain as well. So when there is a neutral feeling, also he understands. So that's the end of the sutta. So for tonight I'll end the sutta here. This chapter on feelings also is quite important to understand. Oh yes. Because they say that you are concentrated one object after another, so they call it vipassana jhana. But the Buddha never talked about vipassana jhana, so it's created by these vipassana monks. That is not jhana at all. Jhana, there's only one jhana. There is the Buddha's jhana, not the vipassana jhana. And the description of jhana is very clear in the suttas. How you attain the jhanas and the states of the jhana. Description of all the jhanas are given very clearly in the suttas. In the case of the vipassana jhana, the 5 hindrances are not eliminated, so how can it be jhana? Yes, it is a method, but then without cultivating your mind, it's very difficult to actually practice it. Just like we say, we like to radiate metta, but if your mind is not strong, you are not actually radiating metta, and also because your mind is not strong, sometimes you think you want to radiate metta, but somebody says something nasty, immediately your metta has vanished. So unless your mind is strong, it's one thing to say you want to practice something. It's another thing whether you can do it or not. That's the purpose of bhavana. Bhavana means development of the mind by meditation. Meditation in the Buddha's suttas always refer to the jhanas. There is no other meditation other than the jhanas in the Buddha's teachings, because in the Majjhima Nikaya, Rabbi Ananda said the type of meditation praised by the Buddha is the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, and fourth jhana. And the type of meditation that the Buddha does not praise at all is the type of meditation where the 5 hindrances are not eliminated. So if you practice any meditation and you don't get rid of the 5 hindrances, that is not Buddhist meditation at all. You have to do both together, because this theory and practice, you need both together. That's why study of the suttas we combine with the meditation practice. So we progress in both ways. Actually, in the one of the Satipatthana Samyutta suttas, the Buddha told one of his monk disciples that 2 foundations are necessary before he practice meditation. One is sila, keeping good moral conduct. The second foundation is right view, because right view comes from understanding the suttas. So after you have attained these 2 foundations, then only the Buddha says you practice the 4 Satipatthana meditation. Proliferation. Proliferation means proliferation of thoughts, useless proliferation of thoughts that lead to a lot of views. Like where did I come from? After that, where will I go? Who made me? Who made this world? And all this. All this, the Buddha says, arises because of the conceit I am or I exist. Once you have the concept, the conceiving that I exist, then you start asking questions. You have all these views. Where did I come from and all these things. And the other word you said is what? Contemplation. Contemplation is reflection. Like when we study the Buddha's words, then we reflect on it, contemplate on it, we digest it. So they are different. Contemplation is control, skillful application of the mind, a wholesome application of the mind. But the other one, proliferation, is unskillful application of the mind. unbeneficial application of the mind? Yeah, by studying the suttas. Study the suttas will give you a lot of ammunition to investigate the five aggregates. And then when you study the suttas, you reflect on it, you try to understand the Buddha's words. And if you are able to understand most of the Buddha's words in the suttas, then you would have attained right view. And when you attain right view, you have already become an Arya. In the Buddha's teachings, the original Buddha's teachings in the Nikayas, nobody can help another person to go for rebirth. Even the Buddha also cannot help anyone to go for rebirth. If the Buddha can, then he would have helped all the beings in the woeful plains to come out of hell by, for example, taking a vow, like they say, Amitabha Buddha made a vow. The only way we can help these beings in the other realms of existence, the Buddha says, is like in that sutta where Brahmin came to ask the Buddha. He said the Brahmin practice, when their relative passes away, they offer food and they burn the food. Do the relatives actually get it? And the Buddha says only ghosts can get it. And I assume that must be because only ghosts come back to their relatives to wait for merit. So only ghosts you can help. The other realms, whatever you do here, they are not even aware of it. For example, a being in hell, like you do Chao Tu or whatever, this liberation of beings, they have no knowledge of it. If they have no knowledge of it, how can they be helped? We don't have a psychic power. Even if we have psychic power also, we still cannot help them in the Buddha's teachings. So we must remember, in Chinese Buddhism was very much influenced by Taoism, because in the year 511, the Emperor Liang Wuti, he commanded that monks and nuns in China must not eat meat. And he made that command because he was a Taoist before. At the age of 40, he came to Buddhism. So he had a lot of Taoist concepts in him. So he noticed that the Buddhist monks ate what we call misiku taunjia, whatever types of crops also they eat. So he compared them with Taoist monks. Taoist monks seem to be very pure in their food. So when he commanded that Buddhist monks and nuns are not allowed to eat meat, that changed the lifestyle of monks and nuns totally, because after that command, the monks and nuns could not go and beg for their food, because when they go and beg for their food, they have to eat whatever is given, and most of the time people are not vegetarians, so they could not get vegetarian food. That being the case, they had to start cooking the food. And when you start cooking the food, that is against the Buddha's Vinaya, the Buddha's precepts for monks and nuns. And then, not only that, they have to look for money to buy the food. That also is against the monks' precepts and nuns' precepts. So when they want to look for money, they have to follow the footsteps of the Taoist priests. They have to do chanting. So they start to do chanting just like the Taoist priests. When use instruments just like the Taoist priests, ting ting tong tong and all that, which the Buddha did not allow monks and nuns to do. So after a while they find that they cannot keep the most of the Vinaya precepts, they could not keep at all. Then they say fang pian, expedient means, bodhisattva vows and all that, which the Buddha never talked about. They introduced bodhisattva vows. And some of the bodhisattva precepts are totally against the Vinaya also. And the Dhamma, the sutras also. So that's what happened. So because of that, they did all this chanting and they adopted this. It's a Taoist belief that you can help beings out of hell. So they also created this concept that you can help beings out of hell. It's not a Buddhist concept. It is a Taoist concept, just like feng shui, is geomancy. Nothing to do with Buddhism. It is from Taoism, but it crept into Buddhism. So that some Mahayana monks also, they practice geomancy, feng shui. So there are a lot of things in Chinese Buddhism which are not actually, it's not actually Buddhism, it's contaminated. Sometimes with Chinese culture also, Chinese culture also has crept into Chinese Buddhism. So this Chao Tu is nothing to do with original Buddhism, liberation of beings from hell. Nobody can help beings come out from hell. If at all, this Chao Tu and all this, like they have this Mahayana Chinese sutra that says that Mahamoggallana helped his mother out of hell. If that is possible, that all the Buddhas would have helped all the beings out of hell. But now we find the beings in hell, they have not reduced, they're still the same. The beings in the ghost realm also still the same. Beings in the animal realm also still the same amount. So who is helping who? Nobody is helping anybody. Buddha says actually nobody can help another person. Nobody can bless another person. Even the Buddha cannot help us. That's why the Buddha said that the Buddhas only show the way. Just indicate to you the way. Which way you want to walk is up to you. Why the Buddha cannot help us? Because the world is a creation of our mind. Our mind creates our world. Just like when you are in a nightmare, you're having a nightmare in your dream, nobody can enter your dream and help you. You are having the nightmare you created yourself. So the karma we create gives us the nightmare of life. So when we create evil karma, we see ourselves lifetime after lifetime suffering. If you create good karma, then you'll see yourself happy. That's why the Buddha says in the Khanda Samyutta that we should see consciousness as a show. As a show, consciousness creates this show. We see ourselves like in a movie, series of movies, one lifetime after another lifetime.
Bhante mentioned that whatever is happening now is due to past karma, and whatever we do will affect our future. We are creating the karma for the future. Now, with past karma, how by we can marry, now we're being married, and we think that all this is actually building up the karma for the future. And how do we address the past karma, accept the past karma, is there anything to do?
Yes, the Buddha says that we can mitigate, lessen the effect of our past unwholesome karma by doing a lot of good deeds now. If we do a lot of good deeds now, then that gives us instant happiness. And then when you are happy, then you don't think about your unhappy states. Because actually karma ripening is we think about, we remember, the evil that we did, and then remorse arises. And remorse gives us suffering. So if you don't remember your past deeds, then it doesn't ripen, your karma does not ripen. That's why the Buddha says, if we keep doing a lot of good deeds now, then we are happy. You're happy, you don't think of the evil that we did, it does not surface.
Okay, for 9C, just now we have Bali,
That's why in the Dhammapada, the Buddha says that mind is the forerunner of all states. So the mind is very important. How we perceive things, we perceive wrongly, you suffer for it. You perceive rightly, then you're happy. Generally, our life is governed by karma vipaka. Okay? But not all suffering is due to karma vipaka. Why? The Buddha says in the sutta, I think we will be coming to it, that the Buddha says, for example, if your body is giving you pain, it might be because you have too much phlegm, or you might have too much bile, or you may have too much wind in your stomach. And these things are maybe because of the food you ate. You ate too much curry, or something, too much chili or what. And another one is the imbalance of the tree. When the tree are not well balanced, also give you body pain. And sometimes because of carelessness. Then sometimes because of chance, external happening, accident, for example. For example, sometimes some people, they go on the road, then they have an accident and they may die. So I think if that person dies because of karma vipaka, then that person will not be reborn as a human being. Because of karma vipaka, his blessing or what is used up. So he does not have the blessing to be reborn as a human being. But if it's due to accident, so it's not due to karma vipaka. So he suddenly dies, then he did not finish his using up his blessings. He still has blessings to be a human being. Then he'll probably be reborn back as a human being again. That's why there are some people, after they pass away, they come back to the human world. Some people, they go down to the ghost realm. But the Buddha says most people, after they die, they will go down to the ghost realm. A few, because of great evil deeds they have done, they go to the animal and the hell realm. But most people, after we die, because we have used up our good karma as a human being, then we will go to the ghost realm. The difference between the ghost realm and the human realm, the blessings is not too great. There is a sutta describing, giving a simile for the 5 realms of existence. The Buddha says, if you go with a man walking a long distance and he's lost and he's hungry and he's thirsty and he's tired, then suddenly he falls into a hole, a big deep hole which is higher than his height. So he cannot climb out of the hole, and that hole is filled with burning embers, charcoal burning. So he gets burned now, he's struggling to come up, he cannot come up. So that is a simile for the hell realm. And then for the animal realm, the Buddha says, the same man walking long distance, tired and hungry, he fell into a shit hole full of shit, excrement, and the hole is deeper than his height, and he also cannot climb up, and he's struggling and eating shit. That's the simile for the animal realm. And then the simile for the ghost realm, that this man walking a long distance, tired and hungry, he comes, he sees a tree, he's so happy, he rests under the tree. But unfortunately, the tree does not have much leaf, so he still feels the sun, the heat of the sun, but he's able to get a bit of rest, but not good rest because of the hot sun. And the simile for the human realm is that this same man walking a long distance, he comes upon a very shady tree, full of leaves, and then he goes under the tree. He's not burned by the sun, so he's able to rest under the tree, and he's very happy resting under the tree. That's the human realm. So you see the difference between the human and the ghost, not that much difference. Right? Both go under the tree, only thing one has more shade, one has less shade. Then the heavenly realm is like this person, he walks a long distance, and suddenly he comes upon a huge mansion. He enters the house, and it's full of luxurious items, and then he sleeps on the bed, he drinks, he helps himself to the food, everything, and he's very happy in that house. He doesn't want to leave that house. That's the simile for the Deva realm. Okay. Okay, so we end here tonight.